Information on how to watch, attend, and participate, as well as agendas, minutes, and recordings, can be found at Broomfield's website at broomfield.org/council meetings. The public may also participate in public comment either in person or by calling 855-695-3744 and pressing *3 to be placed in the queue for comment. Screeners will ask callers for their first and last name and the neighborhood, as well as the agenda item the caller would like to comment on. If you'd like to speak on more than one item on tonight's agenda, you'll need to press *3 each time to be placed back in the queue for comment. Public comment will be limited to 90 minutes total per item. The first 1 through 15 participants in the queue have 3 minutes to speak. The next 16 through 25 have 2 minutes. And if time remains, the next 26 plus participants in the queue have 1 minute to speak. For our hard of hearing residents present, we have wireless headsets available in the back of the council chambers through our AV team. We'll now proceed with tonight's special meeting. The special meeting of the City Council is called to order. Councilmember Leslie is excused and a quorum of the council is present. Will everyone please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. In an effort to keep order for tonight's meeting, I ask council members to limit their comments to 5 minutes. If council members are given an opportunity to speak for a second time on an item, they should limit their comments to 2 minutes. And we'll plan on a 10-minute break at approximately 8 p.m. We'll begin with council's review and approval of this evening's agenda. Council may add or remove items from the consent agenda, or council may revise the order of business for the meeting. Does any member of council have any comments or questions regarding this evening's agenda? Are there any objections to this agenda being approved? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Our first item under petitions and communications is a proclamation declaring May 2024 as Income Aligned Housing Awareness Month. Will Ms. Tessier and Stephen Palmer please come and meet Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf at the podium? So thank you all for joining us this evening. I'll summarize the proclamation and then I'll turn it over to the representatives for comments. This proclamation states that in 1948, the United States signed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, recognizing adequate housing as a component of the human right to an adequate standard of living. The City and County of Broomfield recognize the impact that quality housing has on an individual's ability to thrive, which includes an increase in health, safety, and well-being, family functioning, parenting capacity, academic achievement, community participation, and economic prosperity. In Broomfield, we avoid criminalizing and demoralizing people living in poverty, use person-centered language, and take a strength-based approach to growth and investment for all community members. Multiple community partners work collaboratively to address the diverse and changing needs across the entire spectrum of housing for our community to enhance the quality of life. Therefore, as mayor, I hereby declare and proclaim May 2024 as Income Aligned Housing Awareness Month. Would our representatives like to make any comments?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. I just have a few words and then I'd love to pass it along to Steve. The Housing Division here at the City and County of Broomfield feels so blessed to bring awareness around quality housing, secure housing, and safe housing for all incomes. Many of the partners in the community, some here tonight, I'm so grateful. We have over the last 10 years, we've done a lot of work, and we have over 200 income-aligned housing units over the last 2 years. We have more programs and strengthened partners within our community. We have sweated, we have bled, we have cried and laughed. And we have created a space for equity, justice, and accessibility, and have chosen to fix the system that is broken instead of feeding the myths that people are broken. For these efforts, I want to personally thank all of our partners who have their feet on the pavement and are doing the work to support almost 25% of our population. As well, you know, Council for approving the multiple programs that the Housing Division has put together, and for all the folks out there raising awareness that we are one Broomfield and we are only as strong as our most vulnerable. I want to call out a very special friend tonight, Stephen Palmer, who has agreed to accept this proclamation on behalf of all of us who are experiencing housing insecurity. Steve is a beautiful soul who was recently down in his luck. He happened to walk through the doors at the refuge where he found his strength as well as some partners to assist him in getting in a place to live. He has been housed since last October and is now a beacon for others. So please welcome Steve Palmer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, and all for allowing me to speak here tonight and to accept this proclamation. And thank you for this proclamation in itself, because I believe that this is much needed in our community and our world. I've read through this and I like it very much, but even more, I like the one that I read that was presented May 9th of last year by Ms. Hoffman and SCA. And another person was on there. I can't, Karen?
She's right here.
I'm sorry, can you? No? I have notes in my phone and I'm kind of a stumble bum, so I hope you'll forgive my, this is not my usual crowd.
No worries.
So-
We're just neighbors.
Thank you. Thank you all. I had a lot of things I was going to say that had to do with, 25% of renters are cost burdened and 50% are slightly less cost burdened, but still cost burdened. And I had things, but then I saw all that on that May 9th, 2023. It was very well said. Thank you. And it's true. I was hiding from everybody living in my car about a year and a half ago. And some folks at the refuge were kind enough to help me remember my way and point me in some directions that I could align myself with others who could help me solve some of those issues I was facing. And now I live nearby. I rode my bicycle here tonight in a matter of about 6 minutes. So, I mean, I feel really at home here. This is a beautiful city, a lot of heart here. And I am so grateful that that still exists in our very busy, very sometimes insensitive world. So one thing I learned at the refuge from Marty and from Kathy and from Mike and from Nanette is can't always change the world, but you can change somebody's world. And the people that I've met here in Broomfield have certainly changed mine in so many ways, psychologically, in my heart, my soul, my physical situation as well. And I ramble, please forgive me. I love those energy drinks and I had to have one before I came here tonight because I was a little nervous and, but I have a friend and my friend, I'm going to call him Mr. Bill, and he's given me permission to speak of his situation here tonight. And my friend, Mr. Bill, he's being helped by a lady who's part of the BHA, Miss Sharon Farrell.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
And he's got an immigration nationalization issue. He was adopted in Germany in the 60s by an American service member. And he's been living nearby, I won't point out exactly where, in a tent, which is very waterlogged. And Bill is 66 years old. And because of his paperwork issues, he's been unable to secure his Social Security, but he's waiting for an opening over at Broomfield Greens. I guess you guys probably know where that is. And Chart is working with Bill to help Bill move along when he needs to move along. He's very fond of the wetlands and the birds and such, but his tent is not the best place. So if somebody here has a bit of pull that could maybe kind of help Bill, that would be me helping change somebody's world with your help. And I don't know if that's realistic, but pies in the sky are sometimes achievable, right? Secondly, personally, my situation I live, I'm not necessarily housing insecure at this time, but there are people mentioned in your May 9th proclamation, people coming back home from college, people who are aged seniors, and their income is minimal in comparison to their rent. And sometimes fees and things like that can be an issue for people like us or them. And And, you know, a lot of the apartment buildings, the last one that I read about sold for $67 million to a developer in LA. And then another sold to another investment firm down in Colorado Springs. Well, they don't necessarily understand the heart of Broomfield the way each of you do. So maybe if we could get that, somebody has tossed about ideas of a rental registry that is a partnership between landlords, if you'll want to call them lords, I don't know, landlords and the city and those who, the Economic Development Vitality Squad. I'm not clear on all the nomenclatures, but
It sounds like you are, actually, you know.
Okay. I pay attention when I can remember to do so. But I just, you know, maybe that rental registry is not such a bad idea, and I'm not clear on all the particulars of it, but it's just, I mean, some form of something in that kind of partnership to encourage the landlords to behave in ways that are humane, if you will, and not just profit driven. That, I think that could be very helpful to the folks that we're discussing here tonight. And I really don't know if I could say anything else, and I've probably said plenty. I hope some of it was at least coherent.
It was
Thank you all.
wonderful. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
all.
much, Mr. Palmer.
This for me, I can take this?
Yes, it's for you to
Thank you
keep.
so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, we do have public comment for this, if anyone would like to comment. I don't want to take that opportunity off the table. And then if not, I don't see any online, any council member comments or questions? Councilmember Henkel?
I forgot how to turn on my mic after what, almost 5 years. Thank you for speaking tonight. Steve, where are you now? Oh, there you are. I have just really enjoyed my time with you on Thursdays at the Housing Forum, and I know you've come up with some great ideas. Anytime you want to come to council, we're your kind of people, okay? You're welcome. And there, it is true that we talk about this at the Housing Forum, but there is no them, just us. And that is very true. And what you heard Steve talk about tonight was just the collaboration that it takes. So Steve did not mention one person. Steve did not mention one entity. He mentioned a collaboration of people. And that's what housing security means. It's collaboration. It's people who take risks out there on our population. Thank you, Marty, and the refuge. I get a little teary about that. And you guys go out into the community and you guys actually really care about people. And our staff here also cares about people. Sharon, your work is amazing. And the BHA work as well in this, all of this conversation around housing. And isn't it true that you're also a vet as well? Yes, he's a veteran. And I really appreciate and honor the service that you've given to our country. And I feel like we owe it to you. And we thank you for being here. Thanks for staying.
You, any other council member questions or comments? All right, well, thanks again for you guys. Thank you for being here, Mr. Palmer, and for accepting the proclamation. And best of luck to you. Next is council member reports. Does any member of council have any reports or updates this evening? Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. The only thing I have to report is that over the weekend, so Friday, the 26th and Saturday, the 27th, DRCOG's board had its annual retreat, if you'd like to call it that, down at the DRCOG offices. Saturday was the bulk of the work we did, and we had some presentations put together by staff in regards to innovative funding for older adult services. We serve as the AAA, so the Area Agency on Aging for the Metropolitan Planning area of the Denver. And they have not seen an increase in funding in I don't even know how many years because they get most of their funding from state and federal dollars. And hopefully, I think we're supposed to get some increased funding as for the state overall this year with, I don't remember which bill it is, but there's one bill working through the legislature. We also had an update from, I don't know if it's ECO or Echo Northwest, but it's one of the two. I don't know how they pronounce it. They are the people we contracted with to provide or to do our regional housing needs assessment. We will be finishing that up roughly June, and then we'll be moving into the strategic plan. Just as a quick note, by 2035, the Denver area will have to add roughly 300 to 350,000 units to meet our housing needs. And that number will be 500,000 by 2050. And then lastly, we had an update for transportation funding. So DRCOG has some opportunities and abilities to leverage additional funding or seek out additional funding that we will be discussing probably over the next year or so as we continue to have this conversation about the intersection of housing and transportation.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. Next is Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. So I got a resident reached out to me who I have some connection with, and she let me know that a team of fifth graders from Nativity, also known as Monkey Business, participated in, not the Nativity is known as Monkey Business, but the group of fifth graders is Monkey Business. They participated in a Destination Imagination, an educational academic program teaching valuable skills like creative and critical thinking, problem solving, and teamwork through different competitive STEAM-based science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics challenges. This group of Broomfield students are one of the top scoring Destination Imagination teams in Colorado affiliate tournament, and now have the opportunity to present their challenge solution at Global Finals, an international competition where they will compete against teams from around the globe. So best of luck to this team. If you would like to help support them or cheer them on, please contact Nativity School. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And next is Councilmember Hinkle.
Thank you, Mayor. Just real quick, I don't know if you guys noticed, but the Broomfield Broombots made the front page of the Enterprise. And the reason why is because they're a robotics team out of Broomfield. And these are some young kids. These are middle schoolers and high schoolers. These are a lot of kids too that have never worked in robotics before. And not only that, we have 3 Ukrainian kids on that team. And one particular Ukrainian kid, 2 of them specifically did not speak any English and was very, very shy. And he has come out of his shell. He is more positive, and he's helping resettle kids in his school that are from Venezuela and telling them where to go and being sort of a navigator. A big part of this program is giving kids confidence, and no more confidence than winning the state competition and then working their way to the world competition is what they call it. So it's an international competition. They won 35th place out of 50-some teams, which is amazing. They also won the Inspire Award. And what the Inspire Award does is it gives scholarships to Regis University for 4 years each, a total of $140,000 in college scholarships for each of those kids. And so we're just so very proud. And now they have goals of going to college, not only learning English in high school, but they have plans of going to college. And so they're super excited about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council member updates? Well, I have an update from the Property Tax Commission. As some of you may know, I was appointed by the Colorado Municipal League to represent cities and towns. And we had our last meeting on Friday. I don't know if it's going to be the last meeting because when the chair adjourned, he said, we're done for now. He did introduce a draft bill last Tuesday, I think it was. So we really only had a couple of days to process some of the policy scenarios that were presented. And I went on record to say that these haven't been vetted. So I really didn't feel like we should be saying yes or no until they had been, but time waits for no one. So the commission expressed majority support for 2024 tax and assessment plans as follows. For residential, we voted to maintain the $55,000 value exemption and assessment plans and have the assessment rate at 7.06, which is what it will go back to. And for non-residential, we would maintain the $30,000 value exemption and have that assessment rate at 29%. We would use the Senate Bill 22-238 framework for local government backfills. There was a lot of discussion about the lack of funds available for backfill, but again, that was what the majority of the 19-member commission moved forward. And that, of course, as we all know anyway, local taxing districts can reduce mills to provide tax relief. I did point that out that we can do that anyway. So for the long term, after 2024, there was support to ratchet down the non-residential assessment rate gradually to 25.5% over a 5-year period. So it would go down 0.5% a year. And also, this one's interesting, establish a 6% annual revenue limit, growth limit for tax districts and exemptions for growth in voter-approved levies for specific causes. So it's similar to counties that already have the 5.5 cap, like Boulder. We don't. So I don't know how much this is really going to impact the city and county of Broomfield. But as we know, there's some ballot measures coming in the fall, and one of those has an even slower property growth cap. I think it's 4.5%. So I think a lot of this work is intended to try to circumvent some of these ballot measures. I don't think they will be successful. But one of the things that the committee really felt strongly is that school district funding should be exempt from any revenue limits and any decreases in assessment rates or value exemptions. We need to protect our school funding, and that was pretty much unanimous across the board. So that's my update, and we will see what the redraft of the legislation looks like. I haven't seen it yet, but we just made these decisions on Friday. So Manager Hoffman, anything to add on that?
Plenty, but
Mhm.
we'll wait until we, until we hear more and able to digest what specifically it means for Broomfield.
Right. Well, thank you very much. More to come. I'll keep you guys updated because I guess I'm in it for the long haul. All right. So next is public comments. This is general public comment opportunity. So if anybody wants to comment on matters other than those listed on the agenda, now is the opportunity. And I don't see anyone on the phone, so now we'll move on to reports. We'll now continue. Ms. Hoffman, Manager Hoffman, do you have a report tonight?
I do not.
Thank you. And Ms. Rogers?
No, Mayor, thanks.
Thank you. Moving on, council's consideration of the consent agenda is next. The clerk will read all of the consent items by title, and there'll be one opportunity for public comments and council questions and comments. Will the clerk please read agenda items 6A through 6C by title?
6A, ordinance number 2230, approving the eastern portion of Broomfield City Center filing number 2, Lot 1, rezoning from Planned Unit Development Plan to Parks Recreation and Open Lands District. 6B, resolution number 2024-52, designating certifying officers and an environmental officer for HUD environmental reviews. 6C, request for executive session regarding city contracted waste services / universal collection.
Thank you. We'll now proceed with public comments, starting with in person. If anyone would like to be heard on these items, please come up to the podium. Not seeing any online. You? No. All right. Next is council member questions and comments. Does any member of council have any questions or comments? No? Okay. We're moving along. Before asking for a motion, I want to remind everyone that item 6C is a request for an executive session, which requires 2/3 approval of council. Is there a motion by council that the recommendations contained in the staff reports for the consent items be approved? Thank you, Councilmember Nguyen.
So moved.
Is there a second? Councilmember Delgadillo.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All right. Then council, please cast your vote electronically. All council members have entered their vote, and the results will be displayed on the screen, and that passes 9-0. Thank you. Our first item under action items this evening is a public hearing and council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2024-7 regarding a stealth wireless facility at the Discovery Church property. I'll declare the public hearing open. We'll follow the city's standard public hearing procedures. First, staff will present a summary of the proposal. Next, we'll have the applicant's presentation. Then we'll ask for public comments, final comments from the applicant, and finally, questions from City Council. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, council and community. It's always good to see Miss Burton-Zetti. We usually see her frequently throughout the week, and she was on vacation last week, which makes my heart happy. It's good to have you back, Miss Burton-Zetti.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. If I could have the next slide, please. The applicant this evening is Verizon Wireless. They've submitted an application for our use by special review for a stealth wireless facility and increased building height for the Discovery Church subdivision. The parcel where this tower will be located is a little under 9 acres in size, although the ground equipment that this will occupy is actually under 600 square feet. So it's a very small portion of this larger parcel. The subject property is located on the north side of 144th Avenue and east of Clay Street. The tower itself will be located directly east of the existing church building and southeast of the parking lot. The proposed tower will be located within a structure that's designed to be a faux green silo so that it fits with the rural character of the church and surrounding properties. The parcel is zoned A1A, which is an Adams County Legacy District. It retained its zoning from Adams County when it was annexed into Broomfield. The parcel is also located within the Transitional Overlay Area District, or TOAD district, which allows some additional limited commercial uses within this rural residential area. The proposal is not subject to those TOAD requirements. It's subject to the use by special review requirements for a wireless facility. Next slide, please. This slide shows the location of the wireless tower as compared to the existing church building. As previously mentioned, the structure will be east of the church and southeast of the parking lot. The proposed structure meets all of the required setbacks for the wireless structure. One evergreen is being impacted by the proposed development, which will be relocated to the east side of the silo structure. Next slide, please. So this image shows a computer-generated image of what the structure will look like if approved and constructed. The A1 district specifies that the maximum height for structures on properties such as this that have been subdivided is 25 feet, while it does allow unsubdivided properties to have a higher structure height of 70 feet. The existing building on the Discovery Church property was approved through a use by special review process and has a maximum height of 44 feet. The applicant has identified that certain heights are required to provide adequate wireless service to the area, as well as to enclose the wireless facility within the stealth structure. And the additional height request is reviewed through the use by special review process that is before you this evening. So the proposed height is not unusual for a wireless structure. This is pretty standard as proposed. Next slide, please. The Broomfield Comprehensive Plan designation for this site is rural residential with a business and residential transitional overlay, BRTO. The map on the screen shows the proposed location with the portion of the comprehensive plan land use map. The proposal for a wireless facility use on this parcel is consistent with the comprehensive plan designation and provides infrastructure support for nearby homes and businesses. Next slide, please. A virtual neighborhood meeting was held as required in February 2021. 7 residents provided feedback during this meeting, and the neighborhood meeting notes are summarized in the staff memorandum. Additional comments of support were provided for the project via the Broomfield Voice website, and those are available in the correspondence folder linked to the memorandum. Public notices were completed for this project, and staff has not identified any key issues with the project. And that concludes staff's presentation. The applicant is in attendance this evening, has a presentation as well for you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Burton-Zetti. Next is the applicant presentation. Just as we ask the staff to keep their presentations brief, I ask the applicant to be concise. Will you please identify yourself? They got it for you. Please identify yourself for the record.
Hello, Mayor and council members. My name is Lance Blyle. I live at 2301 Bell Court in Lakewood, and I'm representing Verizon Wireless. So a little history. This has been going on for a long time. This is a really good photo to show, but we initially tried to do a building mount design here with that small cupola up top. So we initially tried because the structure itself is the largest, tallest structure in the area. And I'm going to go over, search ring parameters a little bit later. But a freestanding structure is always the last choice. We work our way from existing structures to the most difficult and most expensive. But the problem with the rooftop on this building is that The steel construction, the roof itself is part of the structural componentry of the building, and we couldn't remove the roof and do the modifications to add on a cupola without basically rebuilding the entire roof and structure. So that was how we ended up going down the next road of what do we do? What do we follow up with? Next slide, please. So first of all, we all wonder, well, how do these cell sites come about? Why are they initiated? And the main issue nowadays is coverage and capacity. So one of the factors in this is the increases in the higher density of housing, traffic. I mean, your housing report just had an astronomical amount of housing requirements that was just mentioned a little bit earlier. And then the engineers provide a search area which has specific parameters to investigate the possible wireless sites. And that's what I do. It's the engineers provide this. I come out and try and decide what is the best way to get antennas in the air so that Verizon can meet its objectives. And then there's 4 basic requirements that we have to meet. We have to find a landlord, or, well, we don't want to call them lords, maybe. We have to find a landowner who's willing to lease to us, capable. The zoning, does it have a path through the zoning and permitting process? The coverage capacity objectives, are they met? And then finally, can we build it? You know, which is what we ran into in the problem with the rooftop. Next slide, please. So search area factors. With this particular site, there's minimal zone districts which really support a wireless facility. And we have a less than a half-mile diameter to look. Because nowadays with the technology, we can't place a site, you know, a mile away to get the coverage objective we need, because it's going to probably back into an existing site. So it's very specific. This is very specific locations in which we need to put the sites. Again, there's a high density single family development to the southwest where the school is. We need to stay away from that. There's no co-locatable structures in that area. And, you know, our options are basically very difficult to meet the 4 requirements. Next slide, please. This is a picture of our search area. You can see that we've got a lake and a park. We've got the residential area, and we have a very small area to work with to make this site actually feasible. Next slide, please. So basically what we do is we start researching, and we call this alternative candidate analysis. So the Discovery Church rooftop, which I just went over, it wasn't constructible. We could get things to work, 3 of the components, but we couldn't build it. And one of the components of providing a permit, an actual feasible permit, is it buildable? We looked at the Risen Savior Church as well as another possible site to build a tower, some type of structure, but it was still too far west, and the church itself is a lot smaller, so it provided less shielding for a structure. We looked at the McKay Lake open space. I mean, it's just incompatible, you know. And we finally ended up with the Discovery Church silo design. So we think it's the best architecturally compatible solution. It's the least obtrusive design in our thoughts. The church is the largest structure in the area, which helps minimize the silo itself, so it's not just silhouetted by itself out there. The members of the church literally call it the barn in reference to the structure, so, you know, kind of blends in there as well. And so we just kind of feel like it's the most compatible design from an alternative structure aspect as well. The antennas will be inside the silo, not visible. The equipment will be inside the silo as well. It's compatible with the current use, meets coverage objectives, which is enormous. And it meets the CCOB requirements as well. Next slide, please. Again, you saw the photo simulations. You can go to the next slide, please. So this is an actual elevation view of the silo. So the antennas would be inside. There will be vents on the top Nowadays, with the equipment inside the silo and no airflow, airflow is very important to make sure that the equipment stays cool. The Verizon ground equipment will also be inside the silo, so everything will be contained inside the silo. It will have available antenna space for 2 other carriers. And only outside the equipment that will be visible is the utility equipment for the H-frame, the meter socket. Next slide, please. This is a view from the west, looking down 144th. Next slide, please. And let's see. Well, staff did such a really good job of this. I don't think I need to go talk about this. Next slide. And here's the coverage map. And thank you so much, Shelby, for putting in the new one. So can I walk around?
Oh, yeah.
This does a very good job of showing.
You want to use the mic on the handheld? You can
Oh,
use that.
sure.
Okay. Might need to turn it on, see. We'll get it working.
Check.
Thank you, Curtis.
So this is a very good example of why cell sites need to be placed specifically. So this is McKay Lake. This is the site that we're requesting. This is the new site that's not on air yet, but it was just recently approved. It's a multi-carrier site down by the King Super. Is that it? Yes, and that'll be in Monopine, I believe.
Excited about that.
I've never heard that before. But you can see how the grid pattern of these sites and how they can't just be thrown over. So in the planning commission meeting, a resident had asked, well, why can't we utilize I believe it's a water district site further west down 144th. And I was, of course, I start stressing out because I think, did I miss something? I just told everybody in the world that there's no co-locatable structures in my search area. But it's 2.5 miles away. And it's actually about right here. So this is why once we go to the next slide and show the coverage increase, you'll see why these have to be specifically placed so that they can connect with the other sites. So next slide, please. Now this is the coverage. Now, if this had moved over here, if we had placed it over here, then it wouldn't be doing its job of connecting these sites as well. But it provides the most coverage, the greatest coverage objective that we can achieve. Please.
Wilcox will be so happy.
Oh, was that the last slide? Oh, okay. Well, I'm done with my presentation.
All right.
Thank you very much. And I really appreciate your consideration in this matter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we're now going to proceed with public comment, starting with in person. If anyone would like to be heard on this item, please come up to the podium. I'm not seeing any online, so we will move on to questions from council. Members should limit themselves to questions during this portion, and the time to introduce amendments and state positions for or against this item is later. Are there any questions, starting with Councilmember Cohen?
Thank you, Mayor. I just had one quick question, but first, thank you for going above and beyond with an attractive design for this. I live next to the one at the Metro Fire Station on Lowell, which was put up before they cared about what it looked like. So if you want to do any retroactive work there, be my guest. I only have a question. It's very nice, but I'm curious, are there any restrictions on, does it have to be lit at
No.
night, or can it
No.
stay dark?
No, the lighting is governed by the FAA. So this structure does not need to be lit. That would be horrendous, actually, right in the neighborhood to have something like that, especially if it's only 50 feet tall.
Okay, thank you.
Right, Councilmember Marsh Holson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one question. Thank you for bringing this to us. I've seen in other places, other communities, the smaller antennas on top of light poles,
Oh, it's small.
but I haven't seen any in our community. And I'm curious to know why We don't see those here.
I could not speak to that, actually. I'm not part of the engineering group. I'm part of the real estate group.
Maybe Ms. Burton Zeddy has something to lend.
Thank you, council member. We actually do see those come in what we call in batches from some of the carriers. So they usually come in batches of 5 to 10. We had expected to see dozens every year, lots and lots of batches, and we haven't seen as many as we expected. But I think it's great that you haven't seen them. That means we're doing exactly what it is that the ordinance that we passed a few years ago was set out to do, which was to allow small cells to go in throughout the community. It's an administrative process, and they are designed to go in very stealth and not be very obtrusive to the built environment. So it's great that that it's not very well seen, but we do have them coming through.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Henkel?
Thank you, Mayor. I think the key word tonight is stealth. I've seen it a few times for sure. I actually used to work at that church and I was there when we built it, and I have $300,000 worth of investments into that church. I will tell you that I have no, result of this, of my vote tonight, though. I don't attend that church anymore. I will say, they had plans of having a silo there, anyway. And so I'm curious if, your plans for your silo is compatible with their plans for their silo, or did they change their plans?
I believe their plans changed from a silo to more of a building structure. I believe, yeah, and I'm not sure exactly how that's going to pan out, but it wasn't, the last I saw was, it wasn't a silo per se, but just more of a round building structure that was good to be west of the church as just an additional structure later on in like their phase 2 development or something like that. But I'm not, please don't quote me on that. It's something I saw back a couple years ago.
Yeah, I'm surprised the property owner isn't here tonight, but this is your thing, can you tell me what it is made out of again? Was that in your application? and I
So
maybe
it's,
missed it?
so that, if you can go back a couple slides. Sure, there we go. So the structure is going to be built out of framework that is fiberglass, actually. So because whenever we do some type of stealthing, which, is a fiberglass material that is RF penetrable. So whenever you hide the antennas behind a screen so that people don't see the antennas, there's only a couple substances that we can utilize, some materials. Fiberglass is the only one of those that we can utilize from a structural standpoint, as well as just a molding standpoint that we can make into different shapes. So it's very pliable, but very strong when you put it into a structural component like a beam or a column or something like that. So it'll be built mainly out of steel down below, and then it'll be fiberglass columns, structural material, and then fiberglass sheeting on the outside.
Okay, thank you very much. And then as far as upkeep goes, what does that contract look like with the landowner? What are you guys going to be there for? Is it a 30-year contract?
Oh, yeah.
Our neighbors want to know, how long is this going to be here? They're excited about it. So
Hopefully it doesn't go away.
I know. Okay. And then I just had a question for staff. This is the first project I think I've heard out of that Wilcox area of not having any Wilcox people write in, either good or bad. Are we making sure that we have contacted people within the radius that we need to contact?
Thank you for the question. Yes, we do make sure that the notifications occur. They did have residents from the neighborhood attend the neighborhood meeting, so they have been engaged. I'm not sure whether they also submitted comments. I can't remember the comments on Brimfield Voice, whether they were from Wilcox residents, but there were attendees at the neighborhood meeting.
Yeah, I read those comments. Thank you very
Yep.
much. Yeah, I think barring any, arguments from that Wilcox area, they normally didn't like the height of the entire church. So for you guys to go above this church, and I made sure I read through everything because I kind of maybe have some past trauma from that. I made sure that there was no, more marks that didn't want it there, but it sounds like everyone wants it there. We want connectivity. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other council member questions? I'm not seeing any. There being no further comments, the public hearing is closed. Next is council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2024-7. Will the clerk please read the proposed resolution by title?
7A, resolution number 2024-7, approving Discovery Church filing number 1, Lot 1, use by special review, Discovery Church Stealth Silo.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Councilmember Henkel?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Cohen? Thank you. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing no further discussion, we'll move forward to the vote on resolution number 2024-7. Council, please cast your vote electronically. All council members have entered their vote. And the results will be displayed on the screen. That passes 9-0 unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you. Our next item under action items this evening is the public hearing and council's consideration on second and final reading of proposed ordinance number 2231 related to Arista parking garage bonds. This item will be concurrently reviewed with item 7C by the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority. The meeting of the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority is called to order to consider agenda item 7C. I'll note that are all members of the authority present? The two on, I know we have member La Evans. Not yet? Okay. Okay, good. So she's been notified. Our Adams 12, our school board representative is also doing a school board thing right now. So that's why she's juggling and she's going to zoom in. So she's new too. So I'll note that all members of the authority are present with the exception of authority member Goldstein. I'll now declare the public hearing open. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mr. Romine.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, members of the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority also. And so thank you very much. We have two items before you. They're concurrent, if you will. They're related to each other. Specifically, one is the resolution that is coming before Borough, that is Resolution 53 UR. And then the ordinances, which is on second reading, is 2231. Carl Front will go through those briefly, but I'll just give you the quick overview to set it up. And just as a point of information, we have, as indicated to the borough members, we have also communicated and discussed this with Jefferson County School District, the finance staff there. So they are aware of this also. So we've tried to be very transparent, both with borough as well as the participating partners in the Arista or within the urban renewal area. Briefly, what this is if you recall, and indicated in previous actions by City Council and by the Borough Board, was the closing of the event center and the implications of that within the operator agreement supporting the parking garage and the structure. That structure is owned by the Arista Metropolitan District. It is not owned by Borough nor the City and County of Broomfield. But we do make contributions, or Borough has made contributions, and the operator made contributions to that. So these are all related to that event. We closed the event center, the Borough closed that event center and terminated the operator agreement back in 2023. And we're bringing forward all of these actions, and you'll see some more coming later this fall related to the bonds related to that facility. In short, as indicated within the presentation, next slide, please. You can see that there are annual payments that were due, and you can see what those annual payments going forward will be. So there's an obligation related to the funding of the parking garage and the operation of it. Those obligations are borough obligations, as well as some support that's coming from the city and county of Broomfield. So the borough obligations will amount to $1 million in 2024, as you can see under bullet point 3. And so that you know, and the borough board knows, there has been sufficient revenues since 2022 to pay those, as well as the original bonds. As a reference, because it might be in some people's minds, borough still has an outstanding obligation to that property of $30 million. And so the money that's flowing into borough, the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority, through those agreements and the setting of that TIF area, the revenue that's coming in will exceed both the bond payments as well as this required payment for the operation support. You can see what the schedule looks like going forward in 2025 and 2028. It's that 1.4 million. And then you can see it slowly moves down slowly until 2039, when the termination of that agreement comes forward. And that's roughly for $100,000 at that point. Next slide, please. The pledged revenues for 2024, they're coming from the district that is there that has a 0.2% sales tax. That's literally supporting transportation within that area. And that's what that 100% of that is going toward. It's also the RTD funds, 45% of that is going of the 3.5% Broomfield sales tax within that RTD, up to $500,000. And then finally, the additional debt coverage, and that is that shortfall that we're talking about here. So that's what kind of wraps it all together, and those are the funding sources. Again, this was something that was discussed as part of the direction that we were following related to that closed property, and then moving forward to make sure that's sustainable. We're keeping all of our obligations in place, keeping all of it. But this is cleaning up all of those agreements. And so what you're going to see, what you saw in the packet, and what Carl's going to talk about, is the ending of certain agreements, so the termination of those agreements, and then the replacement of those agreements. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague from the city attorney's office, who will go through both the ordinance and the resolution. Carl?
Thank you, Mr. Romine.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Carl Frunt, Senior Attorney. So turning to ordinance 2231, thank you, which addresses the annually renewable reserve fund agreement. If council approves this on second reading this evening, this will update the current reserve fund agreement between the city and the district. That update accomplishes two things. It updates the pledged revenues for the parking bonds to account for the lost operating revenue from the event center, and it renews the city's moral obligation to keep the reserve fund fully funded on an annual basis with sufficient amounts to cover the annual debt obligation for the parking bonds. That decision to appropriate funds to replenish the reserve fund is at the discretion of City Council, and that's done on an annual basis. And the reserve fund was and is a critical component of the financing for the parking garage. It was part of the original financing structure back in 2005, 2006, and is what made those bonds marketable, both when they were originally issued and again when they were refinanced in 2020. Next slide. Resolution 2024-53UR, which is the request from Borough this evening, would approve the 2024 IGA between Borough and the Metropolitan District and terminate the 2020 IGA between those two entities. It's asking Borough to approve that new agreement and to, that's repeating, sorry about that. It would adopt Borough's annual payments to the new amended pledge and create debt service waterfall for paying the parking garage bonds. That waterfall would, Jeff kind of ran through that. It would first be the taxes collected by the Transportation District, the ALID district within that area. It would then be the sales taxes collected from RTD Parcel A, and then the borough revenues sufficient to cover any shortfall that's there. Previously, the borough obligation was limited to just $250,000, and that was because the remainder of any shortfall was picked up from the operating income off of the event center that is no longer available. All revenues pledged by borough for the parking garage bonds are subordinate to the 2005 event center bonds. And so this, by taking these two actions, it really truly is a cleanup action to cement this financing around the parking garage. And that concludes staff summary, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fuck. We'll now proceed with public comments, starting with in person. If anyone would like to be heard on this item, please come up to the podium. Don't see anyone online either, so we'll move on to council questions. Are there any questions from council? All right, so what about borough? Is that that's the second thing, right? We do this again? So weird. I don't know why I'm like, there being no further comments, the public hearing is closed. So first, it's council's consideration. Should we take borough comments now, though? Since we're going to,
I think given the discussion and how they're intertwined, we can probably take them both together.
okay, so I'm going to open it up for our borough members. Borough Member Law Evans, please. You know the drill.
And Mayor, Borough Member Goldstein's on Zoom.
Thank you for joining us and welcome, Lori.
Hey there. Hi, Mayor.
Go ahead, and we have Borough Member Law Evans at the podium, so let us know if you can hear.
Good evening, council and fellow borough members. For those of you who I've not met, I'm Elizabeth Law Evans, representing the North Metro Fire Rescue District Board of Directors. And this, obviously, I've followed this situation for a long time in various different capacities. And I want to let you know that the North Metro Fire Rescue District Board of Directors appreciates the angst of this combined body in dealing with, in extricating borough and the city and county of Broomfield from a boondoggle approved by previous councils. That's my word, not my board's word. While at the same time protecting future councils from having to deal with any boondoggles, any inherited boondoggles of their own. So this is a very unfortunate thing, process that has to be done, but it does have to be done. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members have any comments? All right, seeing none. Next is the public hearing. There being no further comments, the public hearing is closed. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2231. Will the clerk please read the proposed ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2231, authorizing the execution and delivery of an amended and restated annually renewable reserve fund agreement for Arista Public Parking Structure and related Arista Metropolitan District Series 2020 bonds and related documents by the city, and providing for other matters relating thereto.
Thank you. Is there a motion from council? Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Delgadillo.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Not seeing any, so we'll do the council vote and then we'll do the borough vote. So seeing no further discussion, we'll move forward to the vote on ordinance number 2231. Council, please cast your vote electronically. All council members have entered their vote, and the results shall be displayed on the screen. The council vote is 9-0. Thank you. Next is the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority's consideration of item 7C. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution number 2024-53-UR by title?
Resolution number 2024-53-UR, authorizing and approving a termination agreement of the 2020 IGA for Arista Parking Structure and authorizing and approving the 2024 intergovernmental agreement for Arista parking structure and related Arista Metropolitan District parking revenues bonds.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Mayor Pro Tem Borough Member Schaaf?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Borough Member Ward?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? So for our remote members, I'll be asking you for your voice vote. Council members, please cast your vote electronically. And then remaining authority members, please state your vote verbally when I say your name. Authority Member Law Evans. Aye. Thank you. Authority Member Goldstein.
Aye.
All right, all authority members have entered their vote and the results will be displayed on screen. Oh, you did it. You added them. And that passes unanimously, 11-0. Oh, I like this. All right, well, thank you very much, Mr. Omine and Mr. Front. Right now, here we are. So our next item under action items this evening, thank you, is council's consideration, and we're done. Authority Member Goldstein, you can go back to school boarding. Okay. Our next item under action items this evening is council's consideration of the proposed resolution approving a forgivable loan to the Broomfield Housing Alliance for the acquisition of the Vista Point property. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor. And joining us this evening is our housing manager, Sharon Tessier. Ms. Tessier.
Thank you, City Manager Hoffman. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Good evening. Can I just give a special thanks to Greg Scott and GIS, as well as Curtis and company. It really takes a village to get this rolling smoothly, and I just really wanted to thank them, as well as the clerk's office. So thank you for having us tonight for this brief overview regarding Broomfield Housing Alliance's application for a forgivable loan to purchase the Vista Point land. Next slide, please. As part of the IGA that CCOB and BHA, Broomfield Housing Alliance, and CCOB as City and County of Broomfield have, BHA may request one-time specific funding, and as such, they are requesting $250,000 forgivable loan to purchase the Vista Point land that A Precious Child is selling. Should council approve this resolution, it will be solely for the acquisition of the property, because as you know, BHA has already submitted a request for council's future consideration to amend the land of said property from light industrial to residential. Next slide, please. This is just a quick slide showing where that parcel of land is on 119th Ave, close to Friends and A Precious Child. That's APC. For those in the know, the lingo. Next slide, please. We wanted to provide some insights into our housing development fund, as this came up quite a number of times in the last couple of presentations. So since 2019, the Housing Development Fund has accumulated roughly $10 million exclusively through the Inclusionary Housing Ordinance, or IHO, as you will hear me talk about it. With most of the money coming earlier in the earlier years, and now that the IHO is maturing, we are seeing a slowdown in the cash in lieu being provided as an alternative option. We wanted you to be aware that the ongoing performance of this fund is somewhat limited, unpredictable, and potentially unsustainable due to the nature of the way we set up the Inclusionary Housing Ordinance to build the units. So it's doing what it needs to do. However, it means that our funding is kind of drying up. In the meantime, the Housing Division is exploring future funding mechanisms that are more sustainable in nature, because as you know, the demand for housing security continues to rise while the funds become more competitive and more scarce. This, coupled with the fiduciary responsibilities and the rigor that all departments are expected to practice, these terms are consistent with how the Housing Division recently funded 2 other income-aligned developments who provided units at 60% AMI, Crosswinds with 159 units, and Northwest Apartments with 50 units. Next slide, please. Staff made the following recommendations. We proposed a forgivable loan at 3% interest with quarterly interest-only payments until BHA receives an award of the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit, or LIHTC funding, at which time the interest payments will be suspended. No loan principal payments are scheduled nor due, and the loan is fully due and payable 6 years after execution of the loan agreement, unless the loan will be fully forgivable at the issuance of certificate of occupancy for a minimum of 50 units with a deed restriction of 40 years for the average income of 60% area AMI, area median income, with BHA remaining a partner in some capacity, which is right up BHA's alley. Of course, if BHA sells the property, they agree that the loan will be due and payable at the time of the purchase of the property. Additionally, and most important for future conversations and considerations between the Housing Division and BHA, having mentioned that this proposal has been consistent with other developers, if council desires a different policy approach when it comes to the Broomfield Housing Authority, staff will defer to your direction, for example, 0% interest financing. So we have that repeatable process that we've all come to appreciate. Next slide, please. The Housing Division would like to note that this land is currently zoned flex light industrial. Staff and the CCOB staff and BHA staff discussed the perception of rezoning this land amongst this light industrial area and agree that this area can work well for future projects, specifically given the context of the housing shortage, access to public transit, jobs, services, amenities, as well as the walkability of this location. Not to mention it meets the housing needs assessment update and goals to secure more income-aligned housing to fill in our current gap of 1,600 units. BHA is also here to provide a presentation and adjust anything that may have transpired in the last few days. So this next slide, please. This concludes our staff's presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tessier. Is there an applicant presentation? No. Oh, there is. Okay, it's not in here. If it is, I skipped it, so go ahead. We'll welcome our applicant to the podium.
Mayor, the reason it's not in there, and it's fine to have BHA speak, is it's a resolution. This isn't a land use item. This isn't
Right.
quasi judicial. So
Okay.
just to
well,
make sure
here,
everybody
since
knows.
you're here.
It's not an applicant. It definitely is the interested party though. So thanks,
Interested
Kristen.
party. Would you like to
There you go.
introduce
Thank
yourself?
you. Alrighty, good evening. Thank you, Sharon. That was a great presentation. So good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members, staff, and our community. I'm Kristen Heiser, the Executive Director of the Broomfield Housing Alliance. Tonight, I am joined by Amanda Ropek, the Senior Project Manager in Real Estate at BHA. We are here this evening to request funding support from City Council to assist BHA in acquiring 2 vacant parcels of land to enable the development of up to 65 units of income-aligned housing. BHA was established by City Council to create diverse housing options to meet the needs of the Broomfield community. Our mission is guided by a board-approved work plan that prioritizes the creation and preservation of homes. This work involves acquiring existing buildings, developing housing, participating in special limited partnerships, and acquiring land for the development of income-aligned housing. The high cost and limited availability of developable land in Broomfield present challenges in producing income-aligned housing. Therefore, BHA actively seeks opportunities to secure land for the production of such housing. In a high-cost competitive market, land is often one of the largest contributors to development costs. By securing land with some level of public subsidy, development costs can be reduced, ultimately benefiting the future residents of the development. Next slide, please. Given that we are at the conceptual stage of this development, BHA has identified the following priorities for this site. A certified architect has determined that the site can support up to 65 units in a community building. This count includes all zoning, parking, and design requirements, including public land dedication. The eventual housing will serve priority populations in need of safe, stable, and affordable housing identified in the recent housing needs assessment. Aligned with BHA's mission and focus, the property would serve households earning 60% area median income or less. That's around $70,000 for a family of 3. Given the close proximity to several community-serving agencies, including A Precious Child, Friends of Broomfield, The Refuge, and the North Denver Cares Food Pantry, programming will include services provided to the residents. Committed to sustainability, BHA intends to design buildings, the site, and landscaping to include sustainable elements, including high-energy performance building practices and materials, and landscaping featuring low water use, native, and xeric plantings. During our last visit to City Council, we heard concerns about the location of the site. Sharon did a great job of addressing some of those tonight, but just wanted to reiterate that BHA is committed to not repeating the missteps of the past by isolating affordable housing next to incompatible uses in distressed neighborhoods with poor schools, lack of access to transit, or substandard social services. In BHA's assessment of this location, while it's not a typical Broomfield neighborhood and the neighborhood is in transition, BHA views this location as offering many quality of life amenities now and even more in the future. This includes access to good schools, multiple transit options, resulting in a transit score of 33 compared to the overall Broomfield score of 10, and close proximity to retail, daycare, recreational opportunities, jobs, and services. In our conversations with neighbors to the site, that includes residents, agency partners, property owners, they describe this area as walkable, connected, quiet, and in their words, optimal for residential development. Looking forward, the adjacency of the development to Broomfield Town Square, which is within a half a mile, and Aresta, just over 1 mile, future residents will have access to 2 of Broomfield's prime catalytic redevelopment projects, offering many future civic, social, and recreational amenities. Next slide, please. As for the timeline, if all goes well, BHA will close on the property this summer. And in the best case scenario, this next month, the Grove will be awarded tax credits. If that occurs, BHA will be reimbursed for its pre-development costs that is invested in the Grove at Cottonwood and be paid a developer fee, which will be reinvested in the pre-development and development of Vista Point homes. Our goal is to start design, community engagement, and entitlements in 2025, apply for tax credits in 2026, and begin construction with occupancy occurring in 2028 if all goes as planned. If we don't receive the tax credits for the Grove this next month, our Grove application will be resubmitted in 2025, with likely our pipeline being delayed by a year. Either way, this timeline aligns with the 6-year term of the loan proposed by the Housing Division staff. Next slide, please. As Sharon mentioned, per the intergovernmental agreement between the City and County of Broomfield and Broomfield Housing Alliance, BHA can request funding to support specific development projects. True to its mission and strategy, BHA is working hard to leverage the resources needed to create and preserve diverse housing options. On behalf of the BHA board, an application was submitted through the Broomfield Housing Division requesting $250,000 from the Housing Development Fund to help with the acquisition of the land. This represents about 20% of the purchase price. Please note that the purchase price that's mentioned in the memo, and I think maybe in the slides previously, was the price prior to our negotiations, and we are now at the price that's listed on this slide. The request in the application was for a 0% interest loan, forgivable at tax credit closing or transfer. In return, Broomfield's investment will result in a deed restriction, which is a legitimate real estate interest, ensuring 40 years of affordability on up to 65 units. Next slide, please. So with that, thank you very much for this opportunity to partner again with the City and County of Broomfield. BHA believes this is a tremendous opportunity to deliver up to 65 units of service-enriched housing in a connected and dynamic community. And we're here and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Heiser and Ms. Tessier. We'll now proceed with public comment, starting with in-person. If anyone would like to be heard on this project or this item, now is the time to speak. Quiet night, isn't it? So moving on to questions from council, members should limit themselves to questions during this portion. The time to introduce amendments and state positions for or against this item is later. Are there any questions from council? Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just have one question. So on the presentation, it talked about that the land purchase would not move forward if the land use change was not approved. Can you tell us what the timing of that land use hearing will be?
I'm going to ask Ms. Ropek to come up because she is overseeing that application process with community development.
Hi, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Council. I'm Amanda Ropek with the Brimfield Housing Alliance. We are currently working on our formal application for the amendment to the PUD that would allow residential use to the property. We are working with the current landowner, Precious Child, to put the application together. We've been informed by the city planning staff that the current landowner has to submit that application. So we're working with them on getting some documents finalized and hope to get that application submitted. I hope by the end of the week, hopefully next week at the latest. And then after that, we will be notified by staff of when our next council day is to come back and go through that process.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Henkel.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one question, and then I'll introduce an amendment later. Just wanted to ask, it looks like on the memo that BHA is requesting the $250,000 forgivable loan, and that staff put on there 3% interest, and then on here on the slides, the BHA is requesting $250 with 0% interest. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Our application was for $250,000 at 0% interest forgivable.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? No? Oh, Councilmember Anderson.
So I just have a quick question on the interest rate. That would just be, whether it was 250 with the 0% or if it was a 3%, that money would just go back into the fund ultimately. Is that correct?
It would.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? I have a question, clarification. So the reason that the 3% package was presented, that's the way that we normally do our loans to developers? Is that?
It is.
Okay, that's what I thought. So that's the standard operating practice. And so that's why it's the way it is right now. If council wanted to change that practice, we would have to decide.
Yes, and it's rather than having it be a one-off, I think what would provide good direction for staff as well as BHA, from a policy perspective, since they are special partners, moving forward so we don't have to do this every single time, say no interest, policy decision for BHA, not the other developers.
Right.
If they ask for loans, there wouldn't be interest. We love those repeatable processes.
No, I wanted to get that out there. So that's just to clarify why there's a difference. That could be a topic for another meeting if we want to talk about the policy part and changing that in policy so we don't have to do amendments. I don't know. I know, because I know it's your amendment and your amendment. So I'm just like, that's what we can do for the future, but I'm rambling. So next is council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2024-66. Will the clerk please read the proposed resolution by title?
Resolution number 2024-66, approving a forgivable loan to the Broomfield Housing Alliance for the acquisition of the Vista Point property.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Councilmember Delgadillo first.
So moved.
And I'll give the second to you, Councilmember Ward.
And I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Henkel?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to amend resolution 2024-66 to eliminate the 3% interest on the loan. And that amendment will be put on the screen, I believe. It's just basically a strike through.
Okay.
And do you want me to speak to this? Or should we open it up for discussion or what's?
We need a
second?
second first, sweetheart. Hold on, sweetheart.
I thought so.
Second?
I don't mind being called
Is there a
sweetheart.
Second, Councilmember Parsons should,
Second.
thank you. Now we can discuss. Go ahead, Councilmember Henkel.
Thank you. Thanks for being here tonight. And I know that we're still working out a lot of kinks. I get that. And I think I don't want this to end up like the Hunger Games, right? Where everyone's just reaching for all this funding. Because we hear from our nonprofits and how much they need funding for food, right? We need housing security. My point tonight, and I do think that we should pass this amendment tonight and then also talk about policy later on, because it sounds like we have a good enough consensus, I think, on council to move something like this, because I've heard from a few other council members that we do want the 0% interest, and then we can just make it a policy. Part of that discussion, though, particularly for BHA, is that the history of BHA is that this used to be our job. And so we created them. They're kind of like our baby, right? You guys are a very strong and powerful baby, though. You guys have come out like my second born, you know, just screaming and ready to go. And I want you guys to know and feel that you're supported. And I also know that our relationship with you guys is different, though, than other developers. We vote on your board members. Your board members are our constituents, and we have to really be mindful of that. We have an IGA with you, and so that's much different. You know, a strong IGA as far as, you know, our development and our relationship. And I even think moving forward, this isn't part of the amendment. You know, we need to kind of analyze what is our relationship and what sort of consistent dollars would you be expecting from Broomfield in the future? I think it's difficult to constantly come back to us all the time and asking for money. I think that we need more predictable sources, and I'm sure Broomfield would agree on your predictable sources too. So knowing what you guys all presented tonight, I would like to move this amendment along. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Okay, so Councilmember Henkel has made a motion for an amendment, and there is a second. The amendment is to eliminate the 3% interest loan. So we're voting on the amendment. Council, please cast your vote electronically. All members have cast their vote, and the results should be displayed, and that passes 8-1. We'll return to the discussion on the resolution. Is there any other further discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. So I mean, we had a study session on this matter on April 16th, just a couple of weeks ago. You know, at that point, you know, or the information that we have tonight, not a lot of information has really changed, other than the fact that there will be a formal application for the PUD amendment that is hopefully going to be submitted this week or next week. And then in the months ahead, we will at some point see that application. You know, this, we had approved a down payment assistance program just a little while ago. And at that point, I put forward an amendment to reduce that down payment assistance program from $1 million to $500,000. At that point, I was concerned that we were going to have a future request for this pot of money, and here it is. So at that time, council was not interested. And I got to believe that moving forward, that we are going to be more cautious with our budgeting and how we do allocate dollars. I really don't agree with this land purchase. I think that when we are looking to spend money, especially, you know, in the case of BHA looking to spend other people's money, I don't believe it makes sense to tie up funds that are put towards a land bank situation, as opposed to putting this money towards shovel-ready projects that would create revenue for BHA as well as create those units. So I do not agree with putting this funding forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? So seeing no further discussion, oh, sorry, Councilmember Henkel.
Thank you, and I appreciate the discussion. I think we're going to be constantly talking about housing, and then we're going to be talking about how land isn't going to be any cheaper down the road. And I know that we are being resourceful. I know even our housing partners in the area are developers who are designed to make affordable housing. We're going to have something come down the pipeline, and you know, things are not going to get any cheaper. And they really want to. They either have the land now and they need to act on it, or they need to get the land as soon as possible. And so I look forward to that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll move forward to the vote on resolution number 2024-66 as amended. Council, please cast your vote electronically. All council members have cast their vote, and the results will be displayed on the screen. That passes 8-1. Thank you all very much. Our final item under action items this evening is council's consideration of a proposed resolution approving amendments to council's procedures and rules of order. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you. Your city county attorney is making her way down to the podium.
All right, Ms. Rogers. Hello.
All right. Good early evening,
I
council
know.
members. Mayor Pro Tem. On March 1st, during the focus session, council started a discussion that it continued on April 2nd about changes to its rules. Council, through charter, can create its own procedures and rules, and this is the document that you do it. Next slide. There were a lot of changes that council had consensus on, so we worked to put those in the draft red line document that was included in the packet. I'm not going to read all of them. I'm just going to highlight each of them. Changing city to city and county, changing city council to just council. Next slide. We did add an intro that the rules is a living document, and this is something that should be reviewed frequently. Especially when there's relevant legislation passed on open meetings or another relevant procedure, or at other times when appropriate. Next slide. Council talked a lot about study sessions, and we added a provision about the intent of study sessions as far as them being held to investigate and study issues and topics with staff. Made it official that study sessions are recorded and broadcast. That is the practice and has been the practice for a long time now, but it's now officially in the rules. Council did talk about if they should change the location of the study session. That wasn't put into the rules right now and something you'll revisit in the future. Parliamentary rules will be relaxed during study session. We put that in the rules to try to encourage that ongoing dialogue, that sort of more informal dialogue. Next slide. Council had sort of a test year of a different process for a request for future action. The direction from council last week was to keep the process that was in the rules and added some encouraging direction to council to say, speak to each other, speak to staff before you bring your request forward. And also put in some limits on, you have 5 minutes to present. What you need to support the future action from other council members would be a majority. Next slide. We did talk about the order of business a lot. Legislative updates will be moved to the last item, although we're 1 week from the legislative session ending and there's not going to be a special session. That's me putting stuff out to the world. And we just talked about where the managers and attorneys reports will stay, said that the manager will set the agenda with the mayor and the mayor pro tem. And council is encouraged to submit words in advance. And we're gonna, and we do this in a lot of situations, but we will make sure that staff's responses to council questions are added to the correspondence folder that's linked on every matter that comes before council. Next slide. Oh, sorry, go back one slide. We did also add reasonable accommodation language added. This council is very flexible with each other as far as remote meetings or having to join a meeting late or leave a meeting early. That's not always the case. So it's in your rules now that should you have a need that's covered by law, that there would be a reasonable accommodation process. Next slide. We just had an amendment, so we tightened up the amendment procedure where the amendment sponsor has 3 minutes to present and then 1 minute to speak. Just an idea to keep amendments on track and maybe not add a lot of time to a discussion that council already was having. Next, so don't change it yet, sorry. A big change, a big substantive change, I think, is that any ordinances, any non-quasi judicial ordinances, and just real quick, a really good example of a quasi judicial ordinance is the rezoning of the bay that was on the consent calendar, the consent agenda for tonight. That in the future, if we do a charter change, will be a resolution, but that's an example of a non-quasi judicial ordinance. But any non-quasi judicial ordinance, such as landscape code or the tree preservation code, stuff like that, that is amended substantively, council is committed to have a third reading and not just vote on it after second reading. And then on electronic meetings, that camera should be on. And if there's issues, please communicate them, and then we can do our best to communicate those issues with the public so they understand maybe why they're not seeing a council member. So next slide. Those changes that I just went through are in that draft edited version linked in the packet. A couple practices that will not change. We're going to keep recording and live streaming all meetings, but it's now in the rules. As I mentioned, the location of study session won't change. No change on council members' speaking times or number of rounds. We're going to retain Robert's rules right now, but we're going to revisit that in the future to maybe look at a rule book that is a little more flexible and a little more looser. And then no changes to the expense policy for elected officials and the practice of the mayor council members being able to share their unused allocations while staying in that overall travel. The allocation council is given as a body. That will not change. Few items for future discussion. Next slide. Conduct of council and consequences. We've already started talking with the mayor and the mayor pro tem, getting resources from other counties as well as other cities to see how they have their conduct rules. How we're going to review state legislation will come back to council in the summer or fall after this legislation is over, and we're going to talk about how to do it for the next one. Sponsorship and attendance at community events. Staff is committed to draft a written policy that would have an effective date of January 2025, and we'll get that back to council. And then there was discussion about the budget process and what happens in the budget process. But at the time of the meeting, there was direction from council, or we did not put any changes in that for future discussion. I'm sort of pausing on that a little bit because I do know that there's an amendment on that point tonight. Next slide. Next slide. I think that's it. That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rogers. We'll now proceed with public comment, starting with in-person. If anyone would like to be heard on this item, please come up to the podium. I'm not seeing anyone online, so questions from council are next. And remember, members should limit themselves to questions during this portion, and the time to introduce amendments and state positions for or against this item is later. Are there any questions from council? Not a one. Wow, we're going to get out of here early. No questions. Next is council. Okay. So no questions. Next is council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2024-69. Will the clerk please read the proposed resolution by title?
Resolution number 2024-69, approving amendments to council procedures and rules of order.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Thank you, Councilmember Delgadillo.
So moved.
And the second, Councilmember Nguyen.
Seconded.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Marshallson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two amendments to propose. The first one is to section, sorry, I just had it. 2.6C. The current, this Charter Review Committee, as you all know, proposed adding language to the charter that has the mayor setting the agendas for council meetings with the assistance of the city county manager. So my amendment makes our rules in concordance with that, except with the adding the mayor pro tem into that. So that's what I'm proposing.
Thank you very much. So is there a second? Councilmember Henkel. Second. Thank you. Is there any discussion? No discussion? Do you have any discussion?
Just what I already said, yeah, the Charter Review Committee suggested, and when we talked about the Charter Review language, the council pretty much decided to go forward with that one, so.
Okay, then saying, no, this is just weird. So Councilmember Marshallson has made a motion for an amendment. It was seconded by Councilmember Henkel, and we don't have any discussion. So council, please cast your vote electronically on the amendment. All council members have entered their vote, and the results will be displayed on screen, and that passes unanimously, 9-0. Councilmember Marshallson.
Thank you, Mayor. I also had an amendment on the budget. Okay, yes. So, as you all know, I had brought forward the request for, language in the rules on the budget and the scheduling process for it. I had put in, my original draft had put in some issues of what is included in the budget. But speaking with Attorney Rogers, realized that that was not the appropriate, the rules was not the appropriate place for that. That was, if council wanted to in the future give further direction on the content of the budget, we should do that by ordinance or resolution. So I just tailored it down to having, and it's kind of the practice that we're already following, a spring, summer study session on the drafting of the budget, allowing us to have a little input on the beginning, and then more of a robust study session process at the end, rather than one study session, a minimum of 2 study sessions. My original draft had put that as a weekend retreat kind of study session, but the revised language allows for more of a flexibility to schedule it around our schedules. And then C is just that, the council can establish other content if we deem appropriate.
All right, thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Henkel? Second. Thank you. Is there any discussion? Well, I have a comment or question, or maybe both. So I'm looking at the development process that Manager Hoffman sent us last week for 2025, which as we know, it started in February, and then all of this work is getting done in the background by the departments. So there is already a study session for council feedback in June scheduled, and then there's another council meeting study session update in August, and then the presentations start in September. So I guess my question is, what are you asking for that we're not already doing?
I'm not. I'm asking for it to be officially in kind of a set, so there's a repeatable process so that every year we do the same type of thing.
Okay, so what we're doing is adequate. You're just trying to memorialize it.
Yes.
Fair enough. Okay. Good. Well, no, I think all of us can get behind that. All right. Well, thank you. Any other discussion? Councilmember Henkel, sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you. Part of that language was I wanted to change that second part on there to, instead of including it just on a straight weekend, just to make sure it's more malleable and interchangeable. I will say though, if we have something in June, it might change by the time that, we want something else in the fall. So I like this repeatable process. If we find that we need this part, then we can move forward with it. But I definitely feel like it's nice to have that time with our staff. And to be honest, I actually think it's a time for our staff to really shine. Like I really enjoy hearing what staff is doing. Like when we had that, when they gave their presentation to us at the Butterfly Pavilion, it was really nice to have some more in-depth knowledge about what their department is doing. And I know we do that online, but it is really nice to have that personal touch. So I would like to go back to that and just let them shine too. So thanks.
Thank you. Any other discussion? So we're voting on Councilmember Marshallson's second amendment. Council members, please, when you can, cast your vote electronically. All council members have entered their vote and the results will be displayed on the screen. That passes 9-0. All right, so we'll now return to the discussion on the resolution. Is there any other further discussion on the resolution as a whole? Not seeing any. Seeing no further discussion, we'll move forward to the vote on resolution number 2024-69 as amended. Council, please cast your vote electronically. All council members have entered their vote and the results will be displayed on the screen. That also passes 9-0. So thank you all very much. Thank you, Ms. Rogers. And we're almost out of here. There are no requests for future actions this evening. So that concludes the items on this evening's special meeting agenda. And the special meeting is adjourned. Thank you.